Sanborn has very explicitly stated on multiple occasions that K4 is solvable.
But it would also be nice if someday somebody did crack this thing, because it really is crackable. It really does say something.
When the CIA commissioned Sanborn to create cryptos back in the late 1980s, he received help from a CIA cryptographer named Edward Shite.
Shite.
Alright, I'm just gonna give my Irish viewers some time to process that surname. Alright, much like Sanborn, Shite is adamant the code is solvable. We wanted to make something that could eventually be deciphered or extracted, rather than something that will never be done, ever. But I must emphasize here that Shite doesn't actually know the solution. He's merely saying that when he and Sanborn devised a general outline for the code, the plan was to create something that could be deciphered. But it's interesting that Shite says deciphered or extracted, because there is indeed more than one way to recover the plaintext. In fact, there's good reason to believe none of the previous segments were solved in the way they were intended to be solved. Ed came up to me after a briefing and said, "The solution is correct, but you didn't do it in the way I intended you to do it." Remember, the NSA solved K1 through K3 not by finding the keywords, but instead by exploiting certain patterns and weaknesses in the ciphers. The same is true of the methods employed by David Stein and Jim Gillogly. To use an analogy, they hotwired a car instead of finding the keys. So the question is, how are we supposed to find those keys? I will say that I have left instructions in the earlier text that refer to later text. Let's start with K2. Alright, so through cryptanalysis, the NSA team deduced the keyword of K2 had a probable length of 8, and this was confirmed once they successfully extracted a plaintext. At this stage, there are a few different ways to reveal the actual keyword. A really neat way of doing it is to truncate the visionaire table so that the number of rows matches the length of the keyword. In this case, the keyword has a length of 8, so we only need the first 8 rows, and not counting the first one, which will act as an index. Then we simply offset each row or alphabet according to the plaintext, like this. The first letter of the plaintext is I, while the first letter of the ciphertext is V, so we slide the first row until the V is in the I column. The second letter pair is T and F, so we slide the second row until the F is in the T column. Once we've done that for each of the 8 rows, the 8-letter keyword abscissa is spelled out vertically in the first column. The word abscissa is a mathematical term that typically refers to the x-coordinate of a point in a 2-dimensional graph. So graph, point, coordinates, coordinate, abscissa. It's unclear how this relates to cryptos, but some believe it's a metaphor.
The only thing this thing is reminding me about is alphabet soup.
I like to be enigmatic, and I love metaphor. Another interpretation is that the process of finding letters in a visionaire table sort of resembles points in a graph where the
I'm still interested in this.
Columns and rows. Anyway, once the keyword was known, people started looking for ways to recover abscissa without first knowing the plaintext. After a lot of searching, they came up with a plausible